All right. Well, good afternoon. Good to see everyone. And we're doing our quarterly update. So for those of you who have been here before, it'll look very familiar. We're going to look at a lot of the things that we pay attention to in greater focus, such as the criminally assaulted shootings, the homicide solvability rate, as well as where we are as a department in terms of staffing and the diversity of our staffing. So been making progress across the board here. Obviously, there was an uptick of violence at the end of quarter four, but even with that uptick, overall, we still saw a dramatic decline in shootings in 2023 compared to 2022. They're still higher than, obviously we're not declaring victory. They're higher than they need to be, and we need to continue to drive those down. But nevertheless, we're on the right path here, and we're looking forward to the future of how we get those down further. Of course, part of that will be our police department. Now that we're fully staffed, we're seeing what else can we do as a department. Could we even add more officers, and how would those best be deployed? So that's one piece. But I think we're reaching the limits of what our police officers can do alone. When we're talking solving homicides at a rate, not 100%, but if you committed a homicide in South Bend, it is becoming a near certainty that we're going to solve that case. So there's a limit to how much more we can do on that front. There's also a limit to what officers are able to do, even if we're able to add an unlimited number. So, what we see is a department that's doing everything they can do, performing at a very high level, and yet we still haven't gotten the results that we want as a community in terms of bringing the violence down. So there are going to be other pieces that aren't necessarily related to the police department to work together as a community to bring the violence and the shootings down. But nevertheless, it is generally sharing good news across the board here on those things that we look at each and every quarter. With that, I'll turn it over to the Chief.
Just a couple things, kind of following in the public safety component. We do have some warming centers open. The city has it on their websites where those centers are. I know that our officers, that we're out there 24/7, obviously, and we've done some transports to some of our local facilities that are open. But please, if you can direct people to those, and in a worst case scenario, if they can't get there, we'll find a way at the police department to get them there. And I know the weather is going to continue, even though we have like one more day of this. Anything below 32 is cold. I don't even know how you figure that the wind is making it that much worse, because it really doesn't matter. But with that being said, it's not over for quite a while yet. We're going to go into the weekend. We're expecting some snow and stuff as well. So salt's not going to work on the roads. And if it does work, it's just going to make it worse. It's going to make thicker ice than what's already there. And that's a notable point to the bypass. I can tell you between 23 and Mayflower is almost always a disaster anytime that we have anything above 5 mile an hour winds. And then we have the stretch over there by where they have the sound barriers up right before you get to Ironwood if you're heading eastbound, and there's an actual tilt in the road a little bit, what makes it a lot harder for us. And then, of course, we had an officer struck on the bypass trying to tend to a crash. So please be aware. I've been personally impressed with some of the driving that's occurred. That's gotten a lot better. There's a lot more noticeable distancing. But I've also seen people without headlights on and snow over, the windows and the back window and stuff and the mirrors. And, we all have to look out for each other, even in these driving situations. So with that, Dan?
Moving into the first slide, I'll be covering that. I'll try to speak loudly without yelling at everybody, since the microphones are in the center of the table there. The first slide that we have is our 2024 Spring Citizens Police Academy. We have listened to the request from the community, which is to have further training for the public, training on what law enforcement does, what we do here at South Bend, and in specific areas. So bring that knowledge to the public, from K-9 to bomb squad to the SWAT team to narcotics investigations, the Detective Bureau with shooting investigations. All those areas and more that I just mentioned We'll have specialists in the room to talk to residents from South Bend and teach them what we do and how we do it and why we do it. And those are 3-hour sessions on Tuesdays starting February 9th, and I believe there are 9 total sessions. We still have space available. If you wish to apply to be a part of the Citizens Police Academy, you can go to our webpage or to our Facebook page. We provide links on those that you can click on and apply to be a part of the Citizens Police Academy. We will still be hosting a fall Citizens Police Academy. This will be the first time that we've had 2 since pre-COVID. We always ran 2 prior to COVID. We had to back off of that during the COVID years, and so we look forward to getting back to doing 2 of those a year. And on to the next slide, which is recruitment and hiring. We have gotten to comfortable staffing levels in 2023 that we hope to continue through 2024. We still look to continue having prospect days. Those have been a huge benefit for us. What we look to do with our prospect days for 2024 is create a pool of recruits, of possible recruits, I should say, applicants. They will have completed 5 out of 8 stages of the hiring process, so if we have someone retire or resign, we can quickly go to that pool and start a background investigation and get those spots filled even quicker than we would in the past. We don't have to contact the individual and start the process from the beginning. We are already 5 steps into it, and we can go straight to that pool to get our spots filled that we need to. And then a snapshot of our recruiting and hiring for 2023, that's the totals for the entire year. You can see we got up to 250 officers that will improve upon tomorrow at the Board of Public Safety meeting. We're swearing on an officer, so we'll be at 251. Total hires, 27 for 2023, and we lost 19 through resignation or retirement. Moving on to our diversity makeup, as you can see, we continue to climb in African American, and the individual is a lateral tomorrow that we're swearing on, who is also African American. Our female has dipped down slightly. We have 7 recruits at the academy that left this month for the academy, and that's why that number came down. They're all male recruits, the 7. 2 of them are African American, and I believe 1 is Hispanic. So we need to continue to work on the Hispanic percentages. Those have gone up and down over 2022 and 2023, but our female and African American have climbed from low 7% up into, as you can see here, we're about to break 11% with African American, and we're over 10 with females.
So next is going to be the gun violence snapshot. You probably all have started marking your remarks next to that slide on your papers. But I mean, it speaks for itself. In 2022, we had 950 incidents. Last year, 795 incidents. That's everything involving a firearm, armed robbery, intimidation, where somebody had threatened or even pointed a gun at another person. So any incident involving a firearm, those are the incidents we had. In 2022, we had 124 criminally assaulted shooting victims, 82 last year. We recovered 538 guns in 2022, 729 last year. I think in 2022, notably though, out of those shooting incidents, we had 97 separate shooting incidents, 25 of them were fatal. Last year, we had 64 separate shooting incidents and 20 of those fatal. So there's a big difference. Nothing celebratory, as I've said before. Anything above 0 is unacceptable. Oh, I think it's still me. And you see, yeah, the next one, you'll see the breakdown in quarters. I think all of you have been here before to see since we started this, but more particular this year, starting in quarter 1. Again, the numbers speak for themselves. And I think on the next slide, that's one of the things that has come up to me quite often. It came up yesterday during some of the events we attended at the Martin Luther King celebration at the Century Center. Especially one was just over a 2.5-hour talk program session that I had attended. And they wanted to know about our group member or gang member involved. And 72% of those last year, we had group member involvement in those shootings. So that's victim and or suspect, and at times it could be even a witness that was with a victim and or a suspect. So you're probably going to ask, so I'll head it off now. There could be further follow-up questions. With our people who do our analytics, our crime analysts, we've gotten a heck of a lot better, a lot more in depth. We've got more police officers. We've gotten a heck of a lot better, unfortunately and fortunately, with our detective work. getting to the bottom or the root of these, at least known gang or group members. Still trying to hone in on the specific reasons, but I can tell you every single reason comes from anger. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's weed, whether it's a beef over Facebook, whether it's a girlfriend, whatever, there's anger involved in those. And ultimately a trigger is pulled when it shouldn't have been.
And I think it's worth highlighting here. You can see dramatically the number of unknowns going down. So it's not to say that in previous years it wasn't a higher percentage. It's just we didn't know that. Now we have better analytics, better data, better intelligence, and we're able to really pinpoint where the majority of the violence is being driven. And as you see, 72%. And that's something that, we know that with guns, with easy access to guns across the board, a simple argument can end up in a fatality or at least a shooting casualty. And those are hard. If they're just domestic situations that arise and end in gun violence, those are big issues that we got to resolve. But that's very hard to have a strategy focused on those. But that's why we have such an emphasis on the group violence intervention strategy, because the vast majority of our shootings come from those individuals, and that's something that other cities and even ourselves have had success at working at driving down. And so there's actually a strategy to address these, whereas the one-off domestic situations are much harder to get on top of.
I'm actually glad you said that, because that brings up a very good point. So with technology comes some curses, and this is one of them as well. To the mayor's point, if you have somebody who's a known group or gang member involved in a domestic situation that turns into a shooting or a fatality, that's group member involvement. So the group or the gang itself may not have played any role whatsoever, but their association or affiliation, just by what they've been doing in the past, will tag along with them in that domestic. Again, there is, it's not skewed, it's just there's a whole bunch of different data within data, and then still within data that we're going to have to mine somehow or figure out a way. We got IT people, they're really good at it, so we'll see how good they really are afterwards.
All right, talking about our death investigations for the entire year, January through December, those murder investigations totaled 22, with 17 of those investigations being resolved and 5 remaining open. Wanted to highlight that of those 5, 3 of them occurred in the end of November and December, so those are still very much active. We are currently working with the prosecutor's office for resolutions, hopefully soon, on those 3. Total number of death investigations, as you can see, is 31, and then total number of murder victims is 23. You'll notice that is different than investigations. We did have a double murder, so that is why we have 23 victims. Wanted to also highlight on this slide that in addition to these investigations, there was an additional 6 cases from 2020 through 2022 that also saw charges filed in them. So as well as a cold case from 2007, which was highlighted through Michiana Crime Stoppers and the Michiana Unsolved segment that led to the unidentified remains being identified. Moving into Crime Stoppers, just some stats again, January through December. There were a total of 348 cases that were closed out or solved because of tips. It's a 34% increase from the year before. $205,000, just over $205,000 in stolen property and narcotics that were recovered. And the big one that we celebrated was rewards authorized for 2023 was $99,250. This is a 125% increase from 2022. Total arrests 266, as well as 2,348 tips. Again, both of those also saw increases over the year before. We continued our Victory Over Violence program, which is a $1,000 automatic reward for tips leading to the arrest or solving of felony crimes committed with a firearm. There was a total of 16 cases and 6 firearms recovered. As we talk about specifically with South Bend, There was a total of 49 cases, which is 14% of the overall total. Staggering $53,000 in stolen property and narcotics. 28,550 rewards were authorized, and a total arrest of 38. And 435 of the tips received were forwarded over to South Bend units, whether that be specific Detective Bureau units or Strategic Focus unit and patrol. We also launched our geofencing campaign where we highlighted 3 specific cases, each in April, May, and June of last year, 3 homicide cases. And then we continued our Michiana Unsolved segment, which saw 4 case updates, and all 4 of those case updates were from South Bend cases. That was the Montel O'Neill homicide, Olivia Carrillo homicide, Dorian Harris homicide, and then the unidentified remains from 2007 being identified as Tracy Wright, and new leads being developed in that investigation.
Before we move on to the next slide, I'd like to say a couple things about Michiana Crime Stoppers and point out that the board for the Michiana Crime Stoppers was very forward-thinking in 2022 and leading into 2023. The initiatives and the increases in rewards, as well as that outside-the-box thinking and how can we help with the gun violence that South Bend was seeing, you can see there the percentage of increase on the cases solved and the rewards handed out certainly contributed to our success in reducing gun violence. As the mayor said, we're not claiming victory over gun violence, but we did have success in reducing from 124 to 82, and we couldn't have done it without Crime Stoppers. Reaching out, wanting people to be heroes in the community of South Bend, giving us those tips so that we can successfully solve cases and hopefully arrest criminals that were involved in those cases. Definitely proved to be beneficial for us here at South Bend.
Yeah, it's a whole working mechanism there. It's, you know, our strategic focus unit, strategic intel, Crime Stoppers, our SAVE, group violence intervention strategies, all the stuff that we have in place it's only obvious that those things were helpful, the increase in officers or whatever. I will tell you as a side note, I actually met with the Crime Stoppers board last week and learned that they actually are in the red from 2023. So I'm pretty sure that they're going to need some help if this trend continues, which again, it's good if it does and bad if it does, but they're going to need all the help they can get with payouts. Sorry.
And the next slide is mine. It's traffic enforcement, and I spoke about in quarter 3. In quarter 2, June 1st, we reached staffing levels that we could provide additional resources to our patrol shifts. Rather than developing a traffic unit, we have our 3 patrol shifts running traffic within their patrol division. And so 2 to 3 officers are assigned to traffic on each of those shifts, and it's their responsibility to go out and handle those complaints that we see come in directly to the police department, or maybe through the mayor's office, or through the streets and lighting division. Traffic calming efforts, a lot of requests for speed humps. We can handle a lot of those requests and complaints that come in. If there's school zones, running stop signs, by taking law enforcement measures. So providing some traffic enforcement. That's why you see the spike in quarter 2. That's when we implemented those traffic officers on the shifts. We did expect it to plateau eventually, and that's what we saw in quarter 4, not only with cold weather, but also the holiday season. We don't want our officers out there writing a bunch of tickets on Thanksgiving or around the Christmas holidays. So we did see that come down a little bit. So finding a happy medium there of about 40 traffic stops, that's throughout 3 shifts a day. That's what we look forward to having in 2024.
And ideally, even less, so people would be obeying the law and traffic things, and we would not have to make traffic stops. So hopefully, I get to Dan's point, we're seeing around maybe 40 is what we're predicting based on the analytics, but 20 would be nice. Because we had to, not because we want to. Sorry. Always on me. So if you remember, we kicked this off. Hannah from our city IT, we had worked on this, and now all other agencies are involved in reporting mental health calls for service. That's known. That's based on what the officer sees, hears, everything. All other senses applied, or if dispatch puts it in that way. I will tell you there still are some things that don't always make it in there, so my guess is those numbers are going to be higher. I'm guessing 1,750 to maybe even 2,000 South Bend alone, mental health calls for service. And I say that because if we have somebody committing a vandalism, for example, breaking windows, and we go up and we have to take that person into custody, there is a crime that has been committed there. This is just based on calls for service. What did we get called to, and what did the officers experience? So it could be put as a mental health call back in from dispatch. It could be put in by the officer, but we're still doing a criminal case that's involved. It doesn't go away. That may be a reasoning, may be a defense or whatever. That's not on us. That's on the prosecutor and above. But I just want to be clear that those numbers are probably a lot lower than, I guess, anecdotal right now. But I'm pretty certain it's higher than that. But that's still an astounding number to have that in 1 year, almost 1,600 known mental health cases.
The next slide is a Sync South Bend update, and we have the mayor listed to talk about it, but I'm prepared to speak about it if you would like.
You can talk about, but the numbers speak for themselves. We're starting to really get moving on that, and cameras are being deployed with partners in the business community and the rest of the community as well.
Yeah, a combination. We saw a considerable rise in registered cameras in Q4. That's due in large part to the launch of our business security grant program, assessments to those businesses and getting that out there so that they can receive funding. I can give you an update on where that is. We have 30 businesses that have crossed the finish line and will receive funding. As part of that funding, integrating into our real-time crime center. Of those 35 have already received funds and have been successfully integrated into the real-time crime center. So in Q1 of 2024, we expect to get those other 25 up and running, and I'll be able to give you an update on that at the end of the first quarter of 2024. And the next slide, I believe, is also mine. So Flock is the company that we use for license plate readers. I'm not going to go over the what, who, and how. I've done that several times, but license plate readers throughout the city, most of them on major thoroughfares, and a few in city parking garages. The next is a snapshot of how we've benefited from license plate readers. 83 cases in the city of South Bend that have assisted us in either ruling out possible suspects or helping us to develop suspects. Most notably, you can see homicide investigations. 4 of our homicides, LPRs, were beneficial in those cases, as well as 8 aggravated assaults with firearms, most of those being shooting scenes where they're non-fatal. So 12 very important ones there, but 83 overall where license plate readers were beneficial, and we will continue to use those in 2024. The next slide is ShotSpotter Connect, and again, I've gone over the what, who, and how. We utilize ShotSpotter for resource deployment at the patrol shift level. That's based on reports that are filed through citizens of South Bend, and it develops areas for resource deployment. All those officers spend time on their shift in those areas. After 45 minutes spread out over an 8-hour period of time in that area, that's a successful completed mission. As you can see, there are over 25,000 missions in 2023, with 98% of those being completed by officers. So putting officers in the right places at the right time, beneficial to us to have that officer's presence and reduce crime in that way.
And that the 98% number shows the benefits of being fully staffed. Before, when we were understaffed, officers would try to make the missions, but then oftentimes get pulled to an emergency call for service, and we're not able to complete the missions at that rate. So this is a metric where you can see what does it mean to be fully staffed. Well, in the patrol division, it means they're able to complete their missions here at a very high rate.
And you can do the math with 25,000 missions by 45 minutes. Was over
1,157,850 personnel hours. Sorry, I'm pretty proud of my calculator skills there.
Yeah.
All right, before we go over the questions, I just want to touch on a couple events that are coming up that I just wanted to point out for your information and also for the public's information. So we are continuing our monthly crime stat meetings here at the police department. Those are always on the second Wednesday of the month. I mentioned this last time, but we're excited that this year we didn't have to take a break for the holidays or for other events here, because now our strategic intel office is fully staffed and able to provide that data. I know many news organizations in this room come to those every month, so we appreciate that. It's just a nice visual way to see what kind of crimes are happening in your neighborhood. Additionally, just touching again on the Citizens Police Academy, the registration deadline is coming up on February 9th. I have some flyers for the reporters here in the room. Hint, hint, if you want to be a part of it. It's just a really great way to understand how our department works, and it could probably serve you as a journalist as well to kind of have a better understanding of the ins and outs of how we do things here. We also have a River Park Safety Summit coming up that we are participating in with the fire department. And Chief, I know you wanted to comment something further on that.
Yeah, so I kind of started this proverbial avalanche. So we've been doing this for years with Notre Dame, talking with Pam from the River Park Neighborhood Association, working with IUSB, River Park Business Association. There's one more. There's like 3 or 4 conglomerates that are involved in the River Park area. The Safety Summit is just kind of like some refreshers that we've done at length with Notre Dame, particularly for the students, but we've never really incorporated IUSB. We do have students. I know they traverse a lot differently than what Notre Dame students do. However, there's still components involved there that would be applicable to the students and to the neighborhood and to the businesses. So this is going to be theoretically a trial run on the Safety Summit. So we'll have South Bend Police, we'll have our community resource officers, we'll have South Bend Fire Department. So we're going to stick to those 2 right now. Media will be invited to that. However, the other, like anybody in South Bend, just can't go to that because it's going to be in the grill part of IUSB. But I think our consortium heads are going to be invited to that to maybe see how. So we have a neighborhood consortium that we meet quarterly on with the entire city of South Bend. Those chairpersons will be invited to that to see if this is something they may be interested in.
And then finally, Michiana Crime Stoppers, we talked about them earlier in the presentation. The biggest fundraiser of the year is the spring paper shredding event. That's tentatively set for April 20th at the fairgrounds again. So I know Chief mentioned that due to the success and people willing to come forward to Crime Stoppers and share their information, there was just a huge year last year, as you saw, 125% increase in rewards authorized. So as a nonprofit, Michiana Crime Stoppers has to rely on the support from the community through these events or through corporate sponsorships to be able to continue paying those out. So it's like Chief said, it's a good problem to have, but then a bad problem when you're the treasurer looking at the money coming out. But it's overall very good that people are utilizing this service. So with that, we will go ahead and open it up to questions.
I can start. I think one of the I think you guys said multiple times regarding the shooting numbers. The numbers speak for themselves, and I think the 82 is a significant decrease from the other years. But I think another number that's interesting is quarter 4 this year had the highest number of both fatal shootings and non-fatal shootings. And I think I would suggest your data would say the same thing, but anecdotally my memory serves that usually the summer months see the most gun violence. Here in quarter 4, kind of the winter months. In a year where you saw an overall decrease in shootings, why is there any reason you would attribute to the uptick at the end of the year when normally you wouldn't see an uptick in those months?
Again, Mark, kind of like you would be anecdotal, and I think kind of like what the mayor said. Some of these there's no way to be able to predict them, a group member or gang member involved or not. Kayla may have a better perspective doing the detective stuff that she does, but I'm pretty sure yours would be anecdotal as well. I do know there's a lot more stress during the holidays. I know that we've always had, my 36 years, an increase or an influx at least in thefts and robberies and domestic violences. So I don't think this would be any different, but I'm only speculating. I haven't. Kayla would probably have a better grasp on a feel than I do. That's just my take on it.
Quarter 4 is relatively close to what quarter 3 was, so I think we just halfway through the year it kind of just took a spike. So I would have to pull those cases and kind of look at them to see what exactly each one of those were before I would feel comfortable kind of giving a better speculation on that.
Sure.
But
But it sounds like there's not one thing that you all immediately comes to mind, like
No.
the Lions won a playoff game or something like
Right,
that.
or the weather was warmer this year. I mean, you
Yeah,
could.
okay. Sure.
Unfortunately, a lot goes into what happens in a particular month, and there are a lot of factors into it, both external and just dynamics happening within our community. If we had a clear answer, that would help us. We'd be able to do even more to stop it. Unfortunately, we don't have all of that information.
And then regarding the percentages of group member involved, you had mentioned it about how, I think I understand what you're saying regarding we have more officers, so we have more data, which means the percentage might look higher. That just might mean we know more. Even with that in mind, does the number of shootings overall going down, but then the percentage of group member involved shootings going up, does that say to you as a department that, hey, the number of shootings that have not happened this year seem to be the more one-off shootings that don't involve gangs or groups?
I think part of it, I'm going to steal some of this from Dan and I's conversation we've had over the past few days, is the ability for detectives to concentrate. Look, if we have more officers on the street and less shootings, they're able to concentrate more on the shootings that they do have and dig a little further in. I mean, I know what it seems like, hey, we get a shooting and we want to go ahead and get the bad guy and get him locked up, and that's the end of it. That is certainly not the end. We still look through root causes, all the back channels that led to whatever that is, in hopeful prevention of a future one, whether it's with them or somebody else, something that we can look at, that we have something tangible to maybe prevent that next one from happening. So I think with that reduction, the detectives are able to spend a little bit, now I'm only speculating, a little bit more time on each of those cases and get a little more in depth instead of just solve and then on to the next one. And I'm not downplaying it, because we take these personal. Every one of our detectives take these personal. But I think yes, there's a lot of things to yours, but I think that's what you're kind of indicating too. That does, I think, help when you have less to concentrate more.
Right. I mean, we have more officers, so we have more officers. We have more civilian analysts. We have, with the number down, that means you have more personnel hours per incident, so you can get more answers. That's part of it. And I think we've also shown the community is also sharing information more than they have in the past, at least at a higher rate. So all of those pieces coming together helps with that number.
I apologize if I missed this, but my understanding is South Bend's doing for the coming 2020, or I guess we're here now, but in 2024 you're still doing the South Bend Alive grants. Have those recipients been announced? I think I saw something about it a while ago.
Yeah, I believe they've been announced, or at least on the website. We can get that information to you. Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
May have gotten missed over the holidays. I don't know. We can check on that.
Holiday news stuff. I think that's all for me for now.
There's been a lot of investment into technology, the real-time crime center. Obviously, now you have lower violence with the gun violence. How's that going to pivot to more investment in technology and helping your officers do their job?
Well, I think with the increase in the analyst, that what we have right now, an increase in the analyst, look, there's several components to this. More cops, that means cops can go out and do more things. And what that is, there's strategies and tactics involved in that. So we know from just a patrol level, and I'm not downplaying that, what should and needs to be done. And then when we have people really diving into the analytics, which again, like the mayor said, there's all these different layers into these solving techniques that we're doing. We're going to rely on them to see what comes next, what would be better. I will tell you that we have a program that nobody had thought about before, and it's just like it's kind of like an Excel spreadsheet on steroids that we got for money tracking. So whether it's found property, whether it's seizure, asset forfeiture, whatever the case may be, we have something we had never used before. We're looking at things like that, and it was actually relatively inexpensive. It wasn't this thousands of dollars worth. Things like that, I think, will get. And as technology comes down, goes up, prices will come down, and we're going to rely on our analysts. That's what we've done for a few years now, and of course Ashley, our PIO, she knows like everything when it comes to that stuff.
And technology, as you know, it just constantly evolves, and there are new potential tools to evaluate. And each one, we know public safety is a top issue for residents, and we don't have an unlimited budget. So we're going to utilize technology to help us be more effective and be efficient in how we deliver our public safety services. With that said, we're also we are definitely taking into account the concerns about the potential dangers of what technology brings. So, we have governance structures and policies to safeguard how these technologies are deployed within our city, and will continue to do so. And I mean, as you know, the technology advances are coming rapidly. Especially when you start thinking about artificial intelligence, and that's something that we're also taking very seriously about the potential dangers of going down that path without having the right governance and policies in place. But we've got to utilize the best available technology because we know we still have work to do to make sure that every neighborhood is safe and feels safe.
And is there going to be expansion, I guess this is for you, Lieutenant, on the geofencing technology that was used during the Crime Stoppers for those 3 cases? The results, and will you be expanding using that?
We can absolutely share further details on that. It was pretty impressive, that geofencing. I want to say just off the top of my head, it was something like 40-some thousand clicks through that particular campaign for each month. So that's 40,000 people that are seeing that campaign, and then whether or not they submit a tip on that particular case or at some other point submit a tip on another case. I mean, our net tip numbers went up for the year as well. So, and then to whether we do that in 2024 depends on budgets. So unfortunately it is not free. So hopefully that's something that we can discuss with our corporate sponsors or the cities.
On mental health call for services, that section, when you have the total number of calls in 2023, just help me understand, so that would be calls that South Bend police officers are dispatched to, that was likely a separate number than ones that you are working with the Oaklawn teams on responding to.
No.
For instance, Oaklawn
Yeah.
would not come out to all of those.
Yeah, so this is one of those. So, say dispatch says there's a unwanted person. So we go out there, a call for service. We go out there, and technically, yes, unwanted person. However, the officer finds out that there's some type of mental health episode or whatever's involved. That officer can change that information. He can't change it. He will put it's a code M, and that will register on the dispatch itself. Whatever the call amounts to, that's in our NIBR system, or it could be maybe somebody walked away from a facility. That would still be a code 1, meaning it's an informal report. We already have a report because that person was in that facility, and then we've taken them back to that facility. So that would all fall into that code 1. So they can change that, or dispatch could change that based on more information that they received. Like the guy, generally speaking, took off all his clothes and he's standing in the middle of the street. It's 11 below. So that would probably, a dispatcher would probably change whatever that call was in the beginning to probably a mental health type call.
Okay, gotcha. And then kind of building off that, I think the last time we talked about kind of the Oaklawn system getting set up and, the mobile crisis teams working with you all in South Bend Police. It sounds like again, this would have been like October, so it sounds like you guys were happy with how things were developing, but the staffing levels on their side, they needed to try and increase those to make it more effective. Is that more or less still where things stand as we round into 2024? Are you tracking how many calls that you both agencies go out jointly? Just generally, how has that been going?
Yeah. I want to be careful of what and how I say this. So I know they are building. They have made extensive progress in the hiring of personnel over there. They are still working on the facility itself. But I will tell you, based on the meetings that I've attended, we have 17 or 22. I can't remember what our number is. I know it's above 17 of our critical incident personnel that are involved. We have 2 right now that are really spearheading the effort, working with Oak Lawn and Epworth. And I've sat in on some of those calls to where we're doing kind of like a triage of people that we deal with and that they either are, could be, or should be dealing with. And I just, within the last couple of weeks, 2 cases specifically, I won't tell you what they are, but I know that that conversation is there now that was not there before, because you can read a report as much as you want, but unless you hear from the other senses that are involved from the officers, or vice versa, only then do you make progress. And I know it has been a long time that this person needed some help, and we finally got that person that help. So and that would never have happened before if we would not have had the conversations that, building to the level that we are.
So you're saying it's kind of at the beginning, you're saying conversation stage, things are just starting because of the staffing, and building a new rapport, or building a new, you mentioned triage.
Yeah, so there's a relationship component that's involved in it from Epworth and Oak Lawn that we really didn't have before. It was almost, very siloed. Yes, we're still trying to accomplish the same things, but it was a very siloed process. It almost seemed like, okay, here's step 1, and I flip the page, and this is step 2. It is not. I have gotten no indication. I've gotten no feel like that in the past several months now. We are able to have, like we're talking right now, to remember, I think I told you before, the red tape. That red tape is still there, but maybe it's a lighter hue of red, or a lighter shade of red.
And until that team is fully staffed and, dependent, when someone calls 911, we've got to respond. The appropriate responder has to respond every single time. And, until you get that rounded out where you can depend on this unit to show up every time, it's hard to work out every kink with how this partnership works with police, because if they're not available, well, then the police are showing up, right? So that's just, we have to ensure that we respond to every 911 call in a timely manner. And so now that we're finally getting, toward those staffing levels, some of these finer pieces can be worked out and make sure that we're sending the right person to the right call.
Yeah, I thought I heard it, but I'm not sure I saw it in the paperwork as far as the total number of, whatever you want to call it, homicides or shooting deaths last year compared to this.
Yep, so we had 20 that died by gunfire last year, 23 total homicides, and we had 25 that died by gunfire in 2022. So that was based on, I don't know if Mark, if you were able to write those down. So 22, we had 97 separate criminal assault shooting incidents. Remember, we don't include suicides or accidentals. And in 23, we had 64 separate shooting incidents. So 25 were fatal in 2022, and 20 were fatal last year.
Any other questions?
I do have some, and I'm just going to ask it. The group member involved situation, you're getting more information from different sources. You're getting more information from crime stuff, tips on the streets. You get more people. Are you starting to see any patterns in groups? I mean, everybody always thinks group. They think gang, or they think loosely grouped high school kids or whatever. Are you seeing any trends or patterns at this point with getting more information about the groups? Because I think that's what people always had. People jump to different kind of conclusions.
Yeah, I don't want to. I mean, I will defer to Kayla or Dan on that. Again, it's anecdotal on my part, because I only see what I see and then know what I know based on conversations that I have out in the community. They are more in depth, but I'm just going to reiterate everything that has been said here, including what the mayor had said. It's all these mechanisms in place right now that I know that's where we're getting the information from now. More time with officers, more time with our detectives, more people calling in, our SAVE outreach, preventing a lot of these. And then we've got a lot better, when Dan talked about our missions, those are all based on facts and evidence and statements. Somebody filed a police report. I know it's too soon, but somebody filed a police report, and that's or more. And based on that report, where statements were made, where facts were obtained, where evidence was gathered. That's where we deploy our officers. And this is their extra step, is finding these things out. It's not digging, but people, when you establish a relationship, people tell you things. That's what we do. Like I'd tell you later on when the cameras are off that my back is really sore today. If I didn't know you, I wouldn't be telling you that. Or I might, I don't know. But
Chief probably would, but yeah. But I mean, this is the group violence. This is the reason why we're hopeful that we can drive down group violence numbers, because there is more of a pattern to that. We know that those who are involved in shootings are most likely to be shot or involved in a future shooting. So that's a place where we can focus our limited resources, both on the law enforcement side and on the social service and intervention side. So our interventionists focus on this population and try to get them onto a nonviolent path. On the law enforcement side, that's where when we get into an enforcement action, that's one of the deterrents, is we focus in on a group that's been causing the most violence, the first or the worst group, and our strategic focus unit hones in on them, and that helps drive it down and act as a deterrent to other groups. So when we're thinking about additional officers, that's one of the conversations we're having, is would an expansion of the strategic focus unit to be able to do more of that on groups, is that the appropriate place to add additional officers? So when we're talking about what can we do with additional officers or the officers we have, that's a place we're looking to do. Obviously we didn't talk about the community resource officers, but we have 3 of those now, and those are working to problem solve issues with the community. That's obviously building relationships with the community to help build that trust with our department, our officers, and also solve some of these probably lesser, you don't want to, every crime is an issue an important issue we take seriously, but in the schemes or in the spectrum of severity, it's not necessarily the issue of gun violence, but there are a lot of neighborhood issues that these officers are helping to solve. So by helping to solve those issues with residents, it builds trust and helps build our ability to work with the community to drive down violence as well.
You're starting this year with about 250 officers. Any idea what you started last year with? Is that as simple as?
Last year we closed out at 243.
yeah.
So about 7-8 more officers, if you count tomorrow's swearing in, that we're starting off this year. An improvement over last year.
There's other factors too, Mark. There's military leave, FMLA injuries, things like that. Those are down a little bit more than they were compared to last year. So things like that. You can theoretically plan for those, but you really can't plan until after something happens and plan from that moment on.
And we're up about 40 since our low.
At least 40.
Yeah, we're up about 40 since our low a couple years ago.
230 being the mark we never thought we'd get across.
Right.
In addition to that, when we started off 2023, about 20 of those 243 were in training. They were field training.
Yeah.
They weren't on their own. They were riding with officers, learning the job for 3 months. So right now we only have about 6 in field training, I believe.
Are you expecting much in retirements this year? I know forces are getting older. Are you expecting much?
We're not expecting a large amount.
A large amount.
Minimal.
Hopefully, we're not going to see a large amount.
Yeah, and because of the numbers and the recruitment efforts, our department is younger than it used to be. So that leads to fewer retirements because they're not at their pension time yet.
Anything else?
Do have a thank you to the chairman of Health and Public Safety, Rachel Tomas Morgan, and your co-chair, right, Mr. Warner, Troy Warner, I think, or is that?
Can't keep track.
Is it? Is that true? Or?
So I haven't memorized yet.
Oh. Yeah, so that's obviously you can tell that our council still keeps track and keep in contact with us about things that are going on in the South Bend Police Department so they can relay even further out from their constituents. So much appreciated for you taking the time out of your days to be here.
Thank you. And Lieutenant, great job. Please let your team know. I know it's as the mayor kind of referred to, it's a whole lot of community work. But still you have to be able to capture that information and capture it quickly. Good job.
Thank you, I will pass
Mr.
that
Mayor,
on.
what's the temperature in your room today?
Which room?
In your office?
14.
Well, it's so the heat seems to be working. You know, the county city building is closed, but it wasn't terrible. At least you know, in a brief stop by the building. So thankfully, you know, there's no crisis in the county city building, but they are working to get it repaired so that folks can return to work here ASAP.
You spend a minimal amount of time there, is that it?
Yeah, I haven't spent. You know, it's closed. You know, it's been closed for the day, so they've made that clear. But so good news is it's not freezing. You know, things aren't going to be iced over or frosted over whenever we get the building back open.
So the heat's working?
That's my that's you know, anecdotally that's my understanding. The heat's working and but they haven't gotten the clear to open the building.
Thank you, everybody.